So, first of all, thank you so much for coming. I'm the last slot of the day, and it's a Sunday, so I'm even amazed that anybody is here, to be honest. And I've just watched Vivian's presentation. She did brilliantly, and I was thinking, I've got notes. This is going to be slightly embarrassing because I'm going to be reading from my notes. So thank you for coming. It's quite a dense presentation, so we're going to be covering a lot of material. If you have any questions, you can interrupt me as I go, or you can ask me questions at the end. I'm hoping to manage to get through the presentation in time. Also, you have to know that I'm half Italian and I get very overexcited about things when I'm talking. So I might end up speaking very quickly, in which case just ask me to slow down, please. Exactly. And if you're confused, I'll do my best. And you have to know that there's quite a lot of Chinese. And the Chinese, because this is what I've been doing at the moment, is translating classical Chinese texts, specifically medical ones. So please do not be scared when you see these lines of Chinese, kind of like, what the hell is that all about? Because I'm going to translate them as I go, and they're very rough translations. So also, if you are a Chinese speaker or you can read Chinese, please don't give me too hard a time if it's not exactly perfect. Okay? So here we go. So first of all, let's start with my title. What does the Chinese mean? So if we look at the last two characters, which are here, he and yi, then this means as one, or to join or combine to one. So there's this idea about some continuity between two different parts. And this relationship is a reciprocal relationship where understanding one helps us to understand the other. And so what are these two reciprocal parts? Well, on the top here, there is, can I do it? Yeah, there is tiān, which is heaven. And I'm not talking about heaven as opposite hell, because hopefully you know that in Chinese, when we talk about heaven, we're talking about heaven and earth. So we're talking about what happens in the sky, astronomy, in the heavens, that kind of thing, rather than the whole Christian cultural idea of there's heaven and there's hell. We don't have that at all. Okay? So heaven is this idea about something that is clear, or it's ascending, or it's yang, or it's light, and it's opposite the earth. Yeah, and then below that is the other character, which is ren. That's us, humans. So the idea is that there's a continuity between tiān, heaven, and ren, humans. And continuity means that we have a resonance and a reciprocity in the way in which we emerge and in the way in which we interact. It doesn't mean that they are unified or connected, because they're already continuous. We are continuous with the heavens. We're not separate. So thus, understanding heaven, tiān, is a way to understand ren, humans. Okay. But why did I put the term holographic in the title then? Well, maybe it was a mistake. And one of my children made a big scene about this, and they told me that I had a complete misunderstanding of what a hologram was. And perhaps I meant a fractal, not a hologram at all. So this is a picture of fractals. And fractals are very interesting because they often have this property of self-similarity, which means that all the component parts resemble the whole. Yeah, so you can see here, for instance, you've got, I chose a nice sort of pentagram type figure, and you can see that within that there's a smaller one, and within that each one has got loads of other smaller ones, and so on and so forth. So this is quite a straightforward example of this fractal. And this repeat pattern occurs at all levels, so that each part, when you look at it really closely, will basically look like the part of the whole object, like a snowflake. That's a really good example of a fractal. Here we go. So what is a hologram? Well, a hologram is a photographic recording of an object, which when it's illuminated by coherent light, i.e. a laser beam, it organizes the light into a 3D representation of the original object. Holograms are like photo-like film images that show a more three-dimensional view of the subject. somehow what they do is they record a 3D object onto a 2D screen. The hologram that we're all familiar with, or that we all saw, at least in my generation, was in the first Star Wars film. And I'm just going to show you what this looks like. They're saying all sorts of interesting things, but we don't really care about that. So my son said, that wasn't a hologram. And actually, when I looked a little bit further, it wasn't a hologram. It was not technically a hologram. Instead, it was an optical illusion. So probably my very literal son, that's why he said that I couldn't possibly mean holography. It didn't go with him at all. Either way, I think that we have elements of both fractals and holography to describe our place in the cosmos. So in a general way, humans were described with relation to heaven and earth. If we look at Ling Shu 71, it says, let's see if I can do it. Heaven has yin and yang. Humans have husbands and wives. The year has 365 days. Humans have 365 joints. The earth has tall mountains, and humans have shoulders and knees, meaning sort of things that pop up. The earth has ravines and valleys. And what do humans have? They have armpits and the hollows behind the knees. Heaven has 12 rivers and channels. This is actually the same character that we have for channels. Meridians, if you want, meridian rivers. And humans have 12 channels and vessels. So you can see that already just in this, you've got some fairly strong correlations between what happens in heaven and earth and what happens in humans. I'm going to soldier on. Earth has springs and vessels, and humans have wei qi. Earth has grass and weeds, and what do we have? Well, we have body hair, like grass and weeds, sprouting out of our skin. Heaven has day and night, and humans have times when we lie down and times when we get up. Heaven has constellations of stars, and humans have teeth. These are actually characters for two different types of teeth. This one's the canine tooth, and these are molar teeth, funnily enough. Heaven has small mountains or small hills, and humans have small joints or small nodes. And then it goes on, but I thought probably you'd had enough of it about this by now. But I wanted the last line, which says, it ends with, as for these, they're the mutual correspondences between heaven, earth, and humans. So they're telling you straight, it's not coming out of nowhere, this kind of thing. It's definitely all there. Let's have a look. Okay. So the ancient Chinese knew that there were laws which applied to the cosmos as much as to humans and to everything all the time. And what was the basis of these rules? Well, one of them was that there was an infinitely renewable source which expressed itself as an infinite number of beings. And those beings all manifested alternation through duality. The infinitely renewable source came out into innumerable number of beings, and these beings were in constant ebb and flow, waxing and waning. They were a duality in constant interaction, such as heaven and earth, yin-yang, winter-summer, hot-cold. There were no values attached to life's duality, nothing to do with the Western attachment of good or bad or heaven and hell, just an awareness that life is patterned this way. So we have this idea about this infinitely renewable source, and we could call this one, or sometimes the oneness. So in heaven, this oneness is known as tiānrénhéyī, the supreme one, the personification of this one central power. The central residence of tiānrénhéyī was known as BAcC, and BAcC was the North Pole, or the pole star, around which the whole sky rotated, or still rotates. So we have this idea of something central around which everything is rotating as you're watching throughout the time of the year. And one in humans is lower dantian, which itself is expressed as the duality, 2 kidneys. On the left-hand side, we have the yin, or the water, or the true water. And on the right-hand side, we have yang, fire, sometimes it's called minister fire, or even Ming Men. Got a little bit of a sideline here about Ming. Ming is a term used for humans and also with relation to the cosmos. In the body, we have Ming Men, which needs to be aligned to follow the rules of heaven in order for the body to be correct, to be upright and in harmony. And if that happens, then we're healthy. But there's also this concept of tianming, the heavenly mandate. The emperor needed to be aligned and follow the heavenly rules in order for everything to be correct and in harmony in his people, tiansha, all under heaven. And there were relationships between humans and the universe and the role of the emperor and the government. The emperor needed to be in tune with heaven so the country would function well and the people were content and happy. Similarly, when humans are aligned with their own Ming, which we translate maybe not best as destiny in Ming Men, then the body is healthy and we can enjoy a long life. This is probably why Ming Men is translated as the gate of destiny or the gate of life. It's the location of our heavenly mandate, so we can ensure health and long life, our destiny, through making sure we're functioning in tune with our environment. But both heaven and humans are also linked through our heart-mind or our Shen. This, which could be called the Tao of heaven, descends into humans while we're still in our mother's wombs. It's called the quickening in the West and allows communication and continuity with heaven. And there are lots of similarities between the two. The humans at the heart of our world use self-cultivation to align the heart so we can follow and hear the Tao. And the heart at the center of the body needs to be empty to maintain communication with heaven and with earth. So in the human body, this idea of oneness can be Ming Men, or it could also be the heart. So already we have another duality. Also, we could think about the vertical axis, the link between the heart and the kidneys, Jing and Shen, or sometimes Shaoyin, which is at the root of our life. So on the left here, I've put some pictures. On the left is a Taoist dance. It's called the Steps of Yu, which follows the stars of the northern ladle or the Big Dipper. So it's a way of aligning yourself with the stars so that then you can follow the Tao. And on the right is an enlarged part of one of the self-cultivation pictures. This is the Neijing tool. And I've just enlarged it so you can see what the heart bit looks like, the inner landscape picture or the inner channels picture. That's what Neijing tool means. It's a little bit of Chinese wordplay. Turns out the Chinese really love wordplay. And it's showing a small child. Can you see him? Where is he? There he is, small child. I think it's probably a man, a boy. And what he's doing is he's holding Beidou, the northern ladle, which is the same thing that the Taoists here were stepping around, on the spiral path to the heart. And sometimes, and you can't see it here, but sometimes there's also this line here is coloured in red. And it goes all the way up to the skull, so it represents the true fire of the heart that is going up to the brain and the marrow. I put a big red circle around it, which isn't in the actual Neijing tool, just in case. So Su Wen 1 gives us an overview of the human life cycle. It's talking about how you can align your Ming with heaven, and so you can enjoy a long life through self-cultivation of your vertical axis. Interestingly enough, the first few chapters of the Su Wen are very much numerologically aligned. So Su Wen 1 talks about one and the oneness and how that kind of thing works. And Su Wen 2 talks about yin yang and what duality is about. And Su Wen 3 talks about life by 3 and so on and so forth. So let's go on. Let's chat about 1 and turn the page. So it turns out that numbers are a really good way to categorize various universal qualities. But the universe works with number and principle. And this is linked to timeliness. To be timely is to be in tune, to be seasonal, to be aligned. And it's a concept that's very linked to the seasons. In fact, in Chinese, the same word, this word 时, is used for timeliness, to be on time, and for the seasons. So the rules, which are structured by timeliness, mean that everything can be more effective. But there's also the idea that doing things in a timely fashion, such as wearing heavy clothes when it gets cold and it's wintry, or generally sort of following the seasons, can influence things before illness can settle into the solidity of form. The Neijing talks a lot of timeliness and doing things before they become form, when you're still able to transform things and not fix them in the form while they're still at the realm of qi. How do we know what the rules or the Tao of heaven is? Well, the Chladni plates, or the science of cymatics, give us a great visual representation of the importance of number and categories. And in Chinese, this is often represented by this character here on the left, which is Li, which originally it talks about the grainings of jade. This bit here is to do with jade, and this bit here is to do with some kind of organization. So Li represents the structure of the universe. And here I have a fun video for you to watch about the Chladni plates, which are made vibrating a metal plate using a tone generator. The metal plate has sprinkled with sand to show the patterns created by the tone vibrations. As the pitch of the tone increases, and it's got it here, the pitch as it changes, more and more complex patterns are created. This sequence of patterns is a visual representation of the vibrations of the universe and their numerical rules. It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. How do the numerical rules apply to this? Increasing complexity?
It's yes, exactly. Yes, the frequency changes and the patterns get more and more complex, which I think is just unbelievable, to be honest. I've looked at quite a few different videos of Chladni plates, and they seem to have a series of people use different frequencies, so it's difficult to compare, but I think that it is always the same pattern for that particular frequency. Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I mean, if you want to have a look, on YouTube, there are absolutely stacks of videos about Chladni plates.
How would this fit? They used to create a kind of closed environment, or box within a box within a box, where they had the different tones, because there was each year had.
No, what you're talking about there, I think, is you're talking about, they call them the 12 pitch pipes, and it's to do with each month. So each month, the idea was that they were in a closed environment, so they wouldn't be affected, and they put, I think it was dust or soot. They were put into the ground up to a certain amount, and then they put soot on top. And then there was a guy who had a job where around about sort of 3 days before the beginning of the month and 3 days after the beginning of the month, he'd hang out and he'd check to see if the chi of that month had arrived in a timely fashion, and it would push the soot off the top of this pitch pipe. I know. So yeah, nothing to do with this. This is obviously much more modern. But the idea of sort of tone and vibration is absolutely inherent in classical Chinese thought.
That thing is like the vibration has pattern of shape and it's reliable and consistent.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I mean, the tone, the idea about the tones, and that not only there's the 5 tones which are related to the 5 elements, and then there's the 12 pitch pipes which relate to the 12 months of the year, but the 5 tones were used to describe the movements of the planets, actually, because they were a very heavenly sort of thing. And the 12 pitch pipes, that's much more earthly time type thing. Yeah? Okay, so this hologram, fractal, contiguous correspondence between humans and heaven gives us a hint as to the relationship of ritual and self-cultivation in humans. Ritual or cultivation leads to the alignment of humans within our universe. The Chinese characters for ritual and our body are very similar. Perhaps this is because human bodies were made following the rules of heaven and earth. So on the top here, this is the character for ritual. And below here, this is the character, one of the characters, because there are various ones of them, for the human body. So if you look at these two characters, you'll notice that they're the same on the right-hand side. This bit here and this bit here is this thing here on the right. And that thing on the right is a character that is used to represent a ceremonial or a sacrificial vessel. The only difference is what happens on the left, here and here. And so when you have the character for ritual, this one here, then on the left-hand side, it's got the idea of an altar with something numinous, something spiritual that's coming down from above, from heaven, onto the altar. And when you look at the human body, then you'll see that on the left-hand side, it's got this, and this is the representation of bones. It's the character for bones. So it's interesting to me that the body and this whole idea about ceremony and ritual are linked very closely. I'm going to show you some nice videos. So here are some examples of the meeting of humans and the, oh, what happened? Did I press something terrible?
Sorry about that.
No, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you for saving me. Okay, so here are some examples of the meetings of humans and the universe. This is a very close-up diagram, video of skin and blood vessels. It's quite graphic, I think. It's another video that I found on YouTube, which is called Strolling Under the Skin. Those are our body hairs. Pretty weird, aren't they? Yeah, I did a bit of video editing. I taught myself some video editing. I thought, why not? So the texture and the grainings and the divisions and the organization of the skin and the flesh is called in Chinese the Zhou Li. And here you can see pictures of the skin at the top and also the grainings of a leaf and the land with rivers and fields and so on and so forth. And I personally think that there's quite a lot of similarity between all these. Suen 54 says, let's have a look. Human skin corresponds to heaven. Human flesh corresponds to earth. And then right at the bottom, we're back to the same one. It says human teeth, face, eyes corresponds to the stars and the planets, which I think is a lovely quote. Our eyes are like nebula. It's amazing what you can find on the internet nowadays. And of course, we all know that the lungs are like trees. So on the left, we have the lungs. On the right, we have an upside down tree. And then on the far right is an image of the lungs from a picture which is called the front view picture. It's from the Ming Dynasty, possibly 1599. And you can see, I put a big circle around it, the leaves of the lungs. There's the circle. And these are the leaves of the lungs, which are just under the throat. This is the throat. Yeah. Our veins are like river deltas or riverbeds. And if any of you have gone to see those Body World exhibitions where they plastinated humans, you know, that's I'd never even come across the word plastinated until I went to the Body Worlds exhibition. And some of those things are quite shocking, and I really didn't like them. But then I went with my kids when they were quite little, and then we saw the arteries, the venous circulation and the arterial circulation in the organs and in the body. And one of my children, he was about 6, and he stood in front of it and he said, "Wow, I never knew the body was so beautiful. It was such an amazing thing to see. It was incredible. So just another example of how our bodies are just like nature. So there are reminders of the links between humans and the universe, or heaven and earth, which we often see in the Huangdi-Neijing. And these list not only physical relationships, but also climates in the cosmos and in our body. And climates in our body are our emotions. So Lingshu 71 again gives even more strict correspondences with number categories as well. It says, heaven is round and earth is square. Humans' head is round and their feet are square, because they correspond to heaven and earth, correspond to it. Heaven has the sun and the moon. Humans have both eyes. Earth has 9 regions and humans have 9 orifices. Heaven has wind and rain. Humans have joy and anger. Heaven has thunder and lightning. And here it doesn't say humans have burping and farting, which is probably what one of my kids would have said. But actually it says humans have sounds and tones. Heaven has 4 seasons. Humans have 4 limbs. Heaven has 5 tones. Those are the ones we were talking about just now. And humans have 5 zang. Heaven has 6 pitch pipes. Again, we were talking about those. And humans have 6 fu. So, and now I'm going to try and explain a little bit more. An easy and effective way to describe the constant coming into beingness from the infinite source is by grouping together in categories things that share similar change or similar qualities. It seems that these similarities can be categorized by number. If they're in the same number set, then they have the same characteristics, and we can say that they are correlative. We see this everywhere in Chinese literature, not only Chinese medicine, but it is pretty clear in the Huangdi-Neijing. I've already told you that to some extent, the first few chapters of the Su Wen, which was reordered by Wang Bing in 762, show the order of heaven and how it applies to humans. Chapter 1 gives the overview of the human life cycle. And then there are 2 main strands, one which ends in 5, which I'm going to talk about first, and one that ends in 6, which I'm going to talk about later. So let's have a look at the one that ends in 5 first. From 1, it becomes 2, and then 2 almost immediately becomes 4. This is 4. And then 4 also has a hidden center, which relates to 5. So 2 could be heaven and earth, yin yang, emperor fire and minister fire, shen and jing, blood and qi. Life is the continuous interchange between these 2 poles, between yin and yang, between light and dark, between form and function, between flavors and qi. And 2 is also a way that we can describe both the vertical and the horizontal axes. The vertical we call the creative axis, and the horizontal we call the created axis. And 2 very easily becomes 4. 4 seasons, 4 qualities of a whole. Su Wen 2 tells you how to tune into your Shen so that you can align yourself with the 4 seasons. So, you've already got that link between Su Wen 2 and 4 immediately. And then 5, which is the crossing point of 4, it's the bit in the center there where they cross, that gives you 5, which immediately takes you to Wuxing, which we translate as 5 elements. But you could also call it 5 processes or 5 phases or even 5 actions, because sometimes the idea of element is too static. So here we have the picture of a pentagon and a pentacle. The pentacle is these green lines showing the Sheng and the Ke cycle. Su Wen 5 has lots of dualities. It says, where am I? Oh, here we go. As for heaven and earth, they are the above and the below of the 10,000 beings or the myriad beings. As for yin yang, they are the male and female of blood and qi. As for left and right, they are the path and the road of yin yang. As for water and fire, they are the signs and the omens of yin yang. As for yin yang, they are the ability and the beginning of the myriad beings. So in Su Wen 5, we're talking a lot about different sorts of dualities. The 4 directions and the 4 seasons are all expressions of the alternation of yin yang. They're the basic patterns of the ebb and flow of life. And there are 4 special words used to describe this continuous flow through the life and death cycle of the seasons. We have Sheng, which relates to springtime, and then Zheng, which relates to growth in summertime. Sheng is birth, and then Zheng is growth in summertime. Shou, which means gathering in autumn, and Cang, which means storage in winter. This alternation of the yin-yang duality is the basic pattern of qi flow in the cosmos and in the body. Yin-yang are expressed as qi and blood, or ying and wei, or clear and turbid. Ling Shu 34 says, as for the 12 months, they're divided into 4 seasons. As for the 4 seasons, they are spring, autumn, winter, and summer. Their qi are all different. And then it says, when yin and wei, so nourishing qi and defensive qi, however you want to translate them, follow each other, mutually follow each other, when yin and yang are known, and when the clear and the turbid do not attack each other, this is like everything follows in agreement, and so there is regulation and everything is in order, meaning we are healthy. The 4 seasons in the body are visible in the pulse. Su Wen 7 says the 4 regularities or the 4 norms correspond to the 4 seasons. And the alternations of yin-yang, the waxing and waning of the seasons, is matched in the pulse. Su Wen 17 says yin-yang have their timeliness or their seasons, you could translate it either way, which matches the periodicity, the waxing and waning of the pulse. If they mutually lose their correspondences with waxing and waning, then we know that the pulse has separated. Well, it might have separated from the norm, or it might be that yin and yang have separated and so there is death. When we know the times, the periods of the separation, then we know the time of death. But when we have 4, this immediately implies 5. The 4 seasons, or the 4 directions, are in the cosmological Wuxing 5-phase order. They're based on the idea of 4 plus the center. And they're related to cycles of the planets and the constellations around that pole star that I showed you at the beginning, around the North Pole, BAcC. So Su Wen 66 says, as for heaven and earth, they are the above and the below of the myriad beings, the 10,000 beings. As for left and right, they are the path and the way, the paths and the roads of yin and yang. As for water and fire, they are the signs and the omens of yin-yang. As for metal and wood, they are the end and the beginning of giving birth, generation, and completion. Although this text, Su Wen 66, is describing 4 in space, above and below, left and right, it's also making direct correspondences with the 5 phases without actually mentioning the center, which is here, the earth. Su Wen 6 says, heaven is yang, earth is yin, the sun or the day is yang, the moon or the month is yin. Big and small months, 360 days complete 1 year. We've lost 5 days here, I'm afraid. Humans also correspond to this. In Chinese, The term for the sun is also the term for the day, and the term for the moon is also the term for the month. So the totality of the seasons and of each part of the year, months and days, is in correspondence with humans. But the rule that governs humans is 5, whooshing. Just as the seasons in the cosmos always follow the same order, spring, summer, autumn, winter, and so on, in humans, we also follow an order, and this is the order of whooshing, the 5 phases, or the 5 elements. Ling Shu 34 says, whooshing, 5 phases, have a sequence. 4 seasons have divisions. If you mutually follow, then everything is regulated or in order. If they mutually go against, then there is disorder. And these are opposite characters. So, the idea about regulation is like everything's correct, and so you're going to be healthy. And the idea about disorder is, if this is a disaster, you're going to get ill. So seasons are the foundation of whooshing of 5 phases. The center, the crossing place of the 4 seasons and the 4 directions, becomes one stage of this cycle. And this cycle, this whooshing 5-phase cycle, describes 5 different phases of an object in transformation. It's based on a seasonal cycle plus the center. But we place the center, the earth, we stick it in between summer and autumn, and we call it late summer. Incidentally, this is a little bugbear of mine, is that the earth character, when we're talking about heaven and earth, you can see it here, is not the same as the earth character when we're talking about earth in 5 elements or 5 phases. You can see that it's different. So here we have the earth as opposed to heaven earth, like signifying the duality, while here we have earth in the world of creation, in the created world, the world that we live in, the world of 5. Even the Chinese terms are different. This one here is to do with clear and turbid, yang and yin, all this kind of duality stuff. Well, when we look here, we're talking about soil. We're talking about something that is physical. We can actually feel it if you want. And soil in 5 phases, in 5 elements, is the place of change and transformation. So somehow it still retains its central qualities, although it is one of 5 possible activities. In the whooshing, in the 5-phase system, the earth phase, or the earth element, aids the transformation from fire, summertime, the south, into metal, autumn, the west. This is actually the hardest transition to make out of the whole cycle, because you're going from full yang when you're right out there in summertime, enjoying the sun and the heat and partying, maybe going to festivals, and then you're having to shut down, start moving downwards into the yin of autumn, and finally into the yin of the deepest yin of winter. So it makes sense that we have something there to help us transform from full yang to start moving inwards into the yin. This example of Suen 5 is a great example of the correspondences between humans and heaven and earth, and the rules and principles of seasons and 5 phases. So this first part, it's in 3 parts. The first part talks about yin-yang and other pairs that show alternation through duality. It says, clear yang rises to heaven, turbid yin returns to the earth. Hence, the movement and the rest of heaven and earth are the guiding principle and the period of Shen Ming. I'm really not going to get into discussing what Shen Ming means, because this could go on a long time. So this is all in terms of duality, alternation through duality. They're talking about yin-yang, they're talking about heaven and earth, those kind of things. The next part, directly afterwards, it says, now it talks about the 4 seasons, it says, hence it's able to generate, grow, gather and store. These are those 4 characters related to the seasons that we looked at before. And and then return to the beginning, meaning that it's a cycle without end. It keeps on going round and round. This is the last part of Suen 5. So Suen 5 ends, or this particular text ends with only the worthy people, only the sages, the people who are just and worthy and able. Above, they match heaven by means of nourishing the head, and below, they follow the image of the earth by means of nourishing the feet. And in the center, they depend on humans' affairs by means of nourishing the 5 Zhang. You can't see that, but that's actually it's a character for the Zhang. I'm sorry, that one should be more visible. So this is the idea of the created world, heaven above, earth below, and the humans in between. Or if you want, the Chinese anatomical view, where you're standing like this, which is the way that our channels are made. So we have the heavens coming down, all the yang channels, and the earth coming up, all the yin channels. So this is what it's describing. This is our created world, i.e. the basis of 5 phases of Wuxing. Okay. So now we've examined one thread from yin yang through to the seasons to Wuxing, the 5 phases. And you can see these quite clearly in Suen 2, Suen 4, and Suen 5. Now let's come back and follow the other strand that ends in 6. This is a series of numbers, 3 to 6, that leads to different organizations of yin-yang and the patterns of the cosmos. 3 can be 3 from the same source. I call this we 3 are one. We see this in Asclepius's staff, which is here. This is not a very good picture, I'm afraid. But it's the idea of there's the staff, and then there are these 2 snakes that do this as they go up, yeah? Or we can also notice this, for instance, of the flow of qi in Ayurveda, where they're looking at the spine, and you've got Ida, Pingala, and Shushumna. So again, Shushumna's in the center, and then Ida and Pingala do this. Or in Chinese medicine, we have the example of Renmai, Dumai, and Chongmai. Chongmai goes up the center, and then we've got Renmai at the front, and we've got Dumai at the back. Similar kind of thing. So that's one way that we can see 3. And these are 2 examples of we 3 are one. And another way that we can look at 3 is this one, where we've got 3 things vertically stacked. 3 things vertically stacked can also be seen in a few different ways. On the left-hand side, we have the idea of pre-heaven or creation, or the vertical axis. So creation, because you've got heaven and then you've got earth, and then both of those contribute and they make humans at some point. On the right-hand side here, you have post-heaven, or the created world. The created world could also be seen as a horizontal axis. That's why I put this blue line at the top here. Our life from dawn to dusk, or from east to west. And what happens here is that human is in the center. So there we're back in this Chinese medicine anatomical position where we're receiving qi from heaven and from earth at the same time. This is in the created world. So Suen 25, humans live in the qi jiao. I haven't seen this translated particularly. I just want to find it. I don't think I've got it on this slide. But anyway, the qi jiao is the knot of interaction between heaven and earth. It's the place where all the energy from heaven comes and all the energy from earth comes, and it joins together. And that joining is our human body. That's how we're able to be alive. So Suen 25 says, so humans' life is from earth. Their destiny or mandate is suspended from heaven. When heaven and earth combine their qi, then the destiny or the mandate is called humans. We see 3 in the body as the 3 treasures, Shen, Qi, Jing, San Cai, and also in the triple burner or the 3 heater, San Jiao. in Chinese medicine and in Taoist exercise and thinking, both these sets of three are essential to life on our planet. Now let's look at another type of three, the other type of three, that we three are one. Here's an example. She said boldly. The book opens, the book closes, and it pivots because of the spine of the book. We need to be able to have a pivot in order to open and close the book. Suen 6 is a very good example of we three are one, and I've laid this out to show the similarity of the text. It's talking about divisions, or sometimes people call them conformations. There are 3 yang conformations and 3 yin ones. So if we look at Suen 6 on the left, we're looking at the yang ones, and it says, so, about the separation and uniting of the 3 yang. Tai yang opens, yang ming closes, shao yang pivots. As for these 3 channels, they cannot lose each other. If they beat and are not floating or superficial, these are called one yang. So all 3 are one yang which needs to be well interlinked and not float off. And then if we look on the right hand side, it's got a very similar text for the yin channels. It says, so let's talk about the separation and uniting of the 3 yin. Tai yin opens, shui yin closes, shao yin pivots. As for the 3 channels, they cannot lose each other. If they beat and are not sinking or deep, then we call these one yin. So again, all 3 are one yin, which needs to be well interlinked and not sinking. We've already seen how we three are one is the opening, closing pivot of 3 yin and 3 yang channels. 3 yin and 3 yang makes 6 channels, and these are called the liujing, 6 channels, the liujing. Each of the 3 yin and 3 yang have an above and a below. These are like the upper and the lower branches, or the branches and the roots of the same tree. So 6 channels actually make 12. For instance, here we have an example of Tai Yin, and you've got the lung channel, which is arm Tai Yin, which are the upper branches of the Tai Yin flavor tree, and the spleen is leg Tai Yin, the lower roots of the Tai Yin flavor tree. The upper and the lower branches are totally mirrored in arm and leg, spleen and lung, kidney and heart, and so on. The upper and the lower branches share a similar climate. In this case, for Tai Yin, the climate is dampness. Damp is the interface between the inside of the body, spleen and lung, to deal with dampness, and the outside of the body. Damp foods, damp environment will affect the spleen and the lungs. So the liujing, these 6 channels, are also a representation of the climates that are linking humans with our environment, with the Qi-jiao, or the place of interaction of heaven and earth. In 3D, 3 becomes 6. 6 is a horizontal plane, all 4 directions, with the vertical axis above and below. That gives us 6. And sometimes you could look at it as an octahedron if you've got a mathematical mind, but maybe you haven't. 6 defines the physical world. So here we can see how 3 can become 6. Above is heaven, below is earth, and humans live in the Qi-jiao, the place of interaction between the heavens and the earth, the intersection of Qi between heaven and earth. And we describe the Qi-jiao in terms of the 4 directions, or in the body, we describe it in terms of the front, the back, the left, and the right. So this shows the underlying organization of 3. We have 4 directions plus above and below, and that gives us 6. And guess what? Suwen 3 and Suwen 6 tell us all about the thread of 3 and 6. And 3 and 6 makes 12. But there also is a way to describe the totality of the human body. And this is talking about 8 and 9. I wonder if I can make this work. Oh, yes. So just as 6 relates to the spatial organization of the body, 9 is the division of territory. It's used to define how the sky is divided and also how the land is divided into 9 regions or 9 territories. And this can also be applied to the body. This is known as the luo shu here, which is said to arise from the shell of a mystical turtle. And it's also known as the magical 3x3 square, because if you count the numbers vertically or horizontally or diagonally, they always add up to the same number, which is 15. So how do we get to 9? By another sleight of hand, we start with 8 and we arrive at 9. So this is the correspondence between space, meaning directions, and time, meaning seasons. So this joins the 8 compass points with the 8 points of the year. And the 8 points of the year are the solstices, the equinoxes, and the 4 beginnings of the seasons. They're called the 8 points of the year. Sometimes they talk about the 8 winds when they're talking about the directions. And this is another way of describing a complete circle, 360 degrees. We go round the year in one full circle, and also we go round all these directions in one full circle. So we have 360 degrees in space, but we also have 360 degrees in time, 360 days. So this is following one of the many Chinese calendars, which is the solar calendar, the solar year, when they talk about 24 solar nodes or 24 solar fortnights, which gives you 15 times 24, which is 360 days. By the way, if you're interested in this, I went the whole hog and made a whole load of videos, which are CPD's recordings about the solar fortnights, because I was so fascinated by them. In the Ling Shu, chapter 77 describes the movement of tiānrénhéyī, that thing that I talked about right at the beginning when I was talking about the one and the oneness and BAcC and all that, as it moves through these 8 points of time and space to make a full circle in the course of the year. Each direction and each time period is related to different levels of society. If the wind comes from the wrong direction at the wrong time, then it causes damage to that sector of society. Ling Shu 78 describes the 9 needles and their use in treatment. And then the same chapter maps the 9 regions of the sky onto the human body. These 9 regions, 8 plus the center, are ruled by the luoshu, that magical map on the back of the turtle, which was thought to describe the movement of tiānrénhéyī in the body. Ling Shu 78 explains the rules of heavenly prohibitions, which are places to avoid needling in specific areas, as that is where tiānrénhéyī resides in the body, and we should not disturb a heavenly spirit's free movement in our body, because that could cause disease. So Ling Shu 78 says, or some of it says, as for these 9, be good at observing the location of the 8 seasonal moments of the year. The 8 seasonal moments of the year are the solstices, the equinoxes, and the beginnings of each season, so as to master and control above and below. So when the body has ulcers and swelling, and you want to treat it, do not select to treat it by draining on those days, i.e. when tiānrénhéyī corresponds to that particular part of the body. Do not drain. These are the so-called days of heavenly prohibition. The shape of 8 plus the center has also been used as a physical building, the Ming Tang, or the Bright Hall, as a means to align humans with heaven through the movement and actions of the emperor, who was known as Tianzi, the son of heaven. This building, I'm sorry about the picture, it's not a very good picture here, but you can maybe see it a little bit better here. This building was the shape of heaven. It was round on the outside and it enclosed the square earth inside. And each of the 4 sides, one for each season, had 3 rooms, 3 months in a season. So here you can see 1 month, 1 month, 1 month, and then 1 month, 1 month, 1 month, 1 month, 1 month, like that. And the central month of each season pointed to the cardinal direction, east, south, west, north, and at the same time included the time period of equinox or solstice. So this would be spring equinox, this would be summer solstice, autumn equinox, winter solstice. So the idea was that the emperor lived in each room and each month in turn, performing the appropriate rituals, wearing the correct colour clothes, eating the specific food, all to align in every way possible with that season and that direction. And if he did that, then the assumption was that his whole country would be in harmony. Everything would work properly because he was aligning himself correctly.
I think giving the tiānrénhéyī in the right part of the month.
Well, not even tiānrénhéyī, just this was a much broader concept. The idea was you do the emperor was the son of heaven, so he was like the representative of heaven on earth, and by aligning himself as in his you know, he did the rituals, the sacrifices, the clothes, the food, the everything. You know, probably his bed faced in the specific direction for all I know, you know, that kind of thing. Then that assured, you know, sort of harmony within the whole of his country. And because we have a direct correlation between what the emperor did for his country and what we do for our body, this also related to, you know, this whole idea about tiānrénhéyī in the body, and that we shouldn't, you know, we need to sort of follow the right way, something like that. That's the forbidden regions, exactly. That's where it comes from, actually, I think. So again, we can see how ritual, body, cosmos, space and time are constantly interlinked and repeated. I'm not just making this up. I know. So Suen 8 and Suen 9 are the joining of space and time to complete the relationship between cosmos and humans. Pretty amazing, huh? Well, it is for me anyway. So I'm getting there. So let's take a closer look at Suen 8. Suen 8 is a chapter that I think most people go through sooner or later. I believe that they're called officials. Some people call them officials. So it describes the body as a government hierarchy. And this is a totality. The whole body is described as the whole of a country. So this is similar to what we were doing before when we were talking about going around the Ming Tang and the body. Yeah. We've also seen this with Ming when I talked about the idea of Ming Men for humans and Tian Ming, the heavenly mandate for the emperor. So we've got this correspondence. So Suen 8 says, as for the heart, it's the official of the monarch and master. Shen Ming comes from it. As for the lungs, it's the official of the prime minister and chancellor. Regulating the rhythm or rule and regulation comes from it. As for the liver, it's the official of the general and the army. Assessment and plans comes from it. As for the gallbladder, it's the official of central uprightness. It's hard to do these at the same time. Determination and decision comes from it. As for Danzhong, center of the chest, it's the official of minister and envoy. Joy and elation comes from it. And then here in the middle, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later. As for the spleen and the stomach, they're the officials of the storehouse and granaries. 5 tastes come from them. As for the large intestine, for the colon, it's the official of the path of transmission. Changes and transformations comes from it. As for the small intestine, it's the official of receiving to prosper. Transforming living things comes from it. As for the kidneys, it's the official of making power arise. Technical skill and ability come from it. As for Sanjiao, the 3 burners, it's the official of opening passageways. Water paths come from it. As for the bladder, It's the official of territories and cities. Jinya, the body fluids, are stored by it. If there is transformation, then urine can come out. We can analyse this and divide this passage in various ways, but one very simple way is the top bit relates to things that are heavenly, very, very pure and clear. The bottom bit relates to things that are very, very human, that allow us to ensure our maintenance on earth, allow us to live our lives. And right in the middle is the pivot of the earth organs, the spleen and the stomach. The pivot is the stomach and spleen, the only two organs that are named together. They are in the 6th position with 5 above and 5 below. All the ones above relate to a heavenly overseer administrative functions, and all the ones below relate to human functions like digestion and reproduction. The spleen and the stomach line is also the only one to talk of a number category. It talks about 5 flavours, and it also mentions flavours. So we're talking about 5 phases on our planet. There's actually a lot in the Neijing where they talk about flavours and qi. So it's talking about something very physical. So the pivot point is something to do with 5 and 6. And again, this is another sleight of hand, because in total there are 12 organs, 12 officials, but these 12 Zhang Fu are actually 5 Zhang and 6 Fu. So there's some kind of strange link between 5, 6 and 12. This is the Ma Wangdui banner, which came from the same place that Vivian was talking about when she was talking about her channels and all that kind of stuff. It's really beautiful, fantastically, amazingly interesting thing to observe. And, you know, again, we could talk about this all day, but we're not going to, because I've only got another quarter of an hour. So the Ma Wangdui banner shows the importance of the cycle of the seasons and yin yang. Here, this is Lady Di, not the same as Diana. And behind her, there are 3 sort of floating people. Those are actually her 3 hun, just out of interest. But below her feet, and I've made it bigger here, you can see there's Lady Di, and there are her 3 floating hun. You can just see them there. And below her feet is this thing here. This is a B disc. It's you can see them made out of jade or all sorts of different stones, very, very common. And this B disc shows the foundation of the physical world. It shows the duality of yin yang. You can see that you've got 2 different kind of color things going through it, which are actually come from down here. Yeah, you can see them, and then they become here. There's some kind of sort of weird birdie things, yeah, and they go down like that. So you've got the yin yang duality, 2 ribbons weaving through the endless cycle of life and death. What is the endless cycle of life and death? Well, that's this B disc, which represents the seasons. So this can represent 5, north, south, east, west, solstices and equinoxes, and the 4 places of transformation from one season to the next. But it can also represent 6, 4 plus these 2 ribbons. So life is the eternal knot between 5 and 6. It's the constant interchange between 5 and 6, which we see in the body as wuxing and 12 channels, or 6 conformations. The importance of 5 and 6 can be seen on many different levels. Lingshu 54 describes the interaction between 5 Zhang and 6 Fu, alongside many other yin-yang pairs, as essential to life and death. It says, when the 5 Zhang are firm and solid, and blood and qi is harmonious and well regulated, when the flesh is free and smooth and the skin is fine and dense, when the circulation of yin, ying and wei does not lose its constancy and its regularity, when the inhalation and the exhalation is subtle and slow, qi in this way circulates by degrees. When the 6 Fu transform the grains and the body fluids are spread throughout the body, when all of these follow their constants, their rhythms, we're then able to grow and exist for a long time. The 5-6 relationship of the Zhang and the Fu is repeated and amplified in the channel system, in the so-called antique or transporting points. There are 5 on the yin channels and there are 6 on the yang channels. The yin channels have the earth point, which is the same as the yuan source point, and the yang channels have the earth point separate from the yuan source point. And finally, another good example of the 5 and 6 knot of life is Suen 11 on the extraordinary or strange Fu. The extraordinary Fu are one-of-a-kind Fu, whose form is that of a Fu, but whose function is like that of a Zhang. They're also extraordinary, as they maintain the continuity and the development of life. This chapter has different pairings of 5 and 6 as yang or yin, form and function. It is a dance of 5 and 6, a dance of the interaction between heaven and earth. In general, as the body corresponds with heaven and earth, and heaven makes 5, the spirit things, and earth responds with 6, the form. So we can say that generally 5, such as the 5 Zhang or the 5 Fu, relate to heaven, and 6, such as the 6 Zhang and the 6 Fu and the 6 extraordinary Fu, relate to earth. But if we compare the 6 Fu with the 6 extraordinary Fu, then the normal Fu are like the image of heaven. They're active and releasing, and their action is to deal with the unclear, the turbid, to refine it into essences or substances. The extraordinary Fu reflect the image of earth, passive storage. So what do the extraordinary Fu store? They store essences, the starting point of life. It's important to store these. The Zhang also store precious substances, for example, the Wushen, the 5 spirits. So looking at Suen 11, it says brain, marrow, bones, vessels, gallbladder, and the uterus. As for these 6, they are generated by the qi of earth. They all store yin and are in the image of earth. Hence they store and they do not drain. These are called permanent and odd or extraordinary Fu. So the stomach, the large intestine, the small intestine, Sanjiao, and the bladder, they're generated, these 5 are generated by the qi of heaven. Their qi is in the image of heaven, hence they drain and do not store. This is called the rule. They receive the turbid qi of the 5 Zhang, and these are called the Fu of transforming and transporting. But 5 and 6 adds up to 11, not 12. We need 12. So where is that extra organ? It seems that the extra organ is either in the fire or in the water. It's to do with the vertical axis of creation. The fire or water is the first representation of yin-yang duality. We return to the source of life as physical in the water or as spiritual in the fire. There are 2 kidneys, or we could say there's kidney, which is here, and Ming Men, or water and fire within the water. Or we can also talk about 2 fires, emperor fire and minister fire. Emperor fire is universal fire, like the sun or the Shen. Minister fire is the heat for all transformations in the body, sometimes described also as the fire held in the water, whose continued existence maintains human life. So we have 5 Zhang, 6 Fu, and 12 channels. And there's a correspondence between the flow of qi in the body and the flow of qi throughout the year. Suen 7 says, 12 follow and correspond to the 12 months. 12 months correspond to the 12 vessels. Internally, each channel relates to 5 Zhang and 6 Fu. Externally, these channels relate to the 12 months and the seasons, and so also to the climates. You could say that internally, our Zhang Fu, our bodies, correspond to the principle of wuxing, 5 phases, and externally, our bodies correspond to the principles of liujing, the 6 channels, through open, closing, pivoting, and the climates.
Excuse me. What you just mentioned about Suwen 7 and the correspondences between the mind, the channels and the month. Is there any relationship that you found in the classics, at least in the Suwen, between the hours and the channels?
It's a nice try. I had a go, but haven't got anywhere. So now we return to the idea of the holographic universe. You'll be pleased to hear, in case I've made you all fall asleep, that I'm almost at the end of this presentation. Or better still, showing something on a 2D surface that looks like it is in 3D. This picture actually shows a Metatron. This is a Metatron. Who even knew they existed? It's a 4D object that is represented in 3D space. We could say that there's some holography happening here, as it is a change of dimension. So first, let's have a look at the central shape in grey, this thing here. This is an image of a dodecahedron. A dodecahedron has 12 sides, and each side is a pentagon, and I've highlighted one side in yellow so you can see the pentagon. This is our inside. It follows Wuxing 5 phases as the rules of 5 Zhang and 6 Fu organs. But the dodecahedron has 12 sides. There are actually 12 of these pentagonal things. This dodecahedron is sitting inside a red hexagon. This is our outside, the 12 channels, the 12 months which interface with the world we live in, the climates. Humans live in the knot between 5 and 6 on many different levels, and we really are in the holographic universe. The relationship of humans and the cosmos is one of mutual correspondence, emanating from an infinitely renewable source and manifesting in so many ways through the alternation of duality. So now you know why I chose this title, as we truly are stardust. Thank you for following me in this journey, and I hope I've given you some valuable, thought-provoking material. And maybe if you enjoyed my talk and you're interested in following me in my other explorations, and there are quite a few crazy explorations, in an act of shameless self-promotion, you may want to have a look at the other CPD courses I have on various sites. I look forward to your questions and thoughts. Done. You're probably all in a stunned silence now, so. Ah, thank you.
Sorry, I was just going to say, can you put the last slide back up again?
Oh, how do I do that? Do I go back? Woo! I'll leave it on. Shameless self-promotion.
I just want to follow up on what Elliot was saying. Were you alluding to the Chinese clock?
Yes.
So the Chinese clock doesn't exist?
Well, I mean, it's one of those things. So there's definitely a correlation between the channels and the months of the year. And, you know, when they talk about the months of the year, they also often talk about the 2-hour periods. So there's a correlate. You can kind of go from one to one and then from that one to that one, but there's no direct correspondence. You can kind of imply it, but there's nothing direct. Nothing, not that I have found so far, but you know, maybe. Some people say that this was because everybody knew that each month of the year related to a particular time period, then, you know, they didn't bother writing about it. Do you see what I mean? It was, everybody knew that anyway, because, you know, they use exactly the same terms to talk about the months of the year that they use to talk about the 2-hour periods. Do you see what I mean? So there's, you know, it could be there, but they never said it directly that I have seen so far.
It's quite interesting that I saw something several years ago about how what it was saying in modern terms was how organs have a peak and a dip throughout the year, throughout the day rather, and the liver is most active.
Yeah. They've done some Western research on that. It definitely exists. Yeah. And in the things that I've read, which are more to do with calendrics, to do with the movement of the qi throughout the calendar, you know, because there are lots of different calendars and stuff like that. And there was some very early work done by sinologists and historians, and they had pictures of of the 12 months of the year and the 12 hours of the day totally in correspondence, which really reassured me because I felt like, oh, wow, okay, so they really did think that. And these were historians who were using sort of much, much older texts to say about it. Yeah, so pretty good, but not actually written in the Suwen. Yeah? Anybody else?
I mentioned that because it was this, I think there is also very often confusion with the actual circulation of qi that then we use also to describe, to keep the needles in for a certain amount of time. And the description in the Wu Shu, it follows that pattern, but then it goes along the Ren and Du.
Yeah, there's Ren, Ma, and Du Ma as well, exactly.
And so
How do you make that fit?
So
But,
it's very difficult to find this. Because they use the branches to describe the mantra.
Yes.
Yeah.
But how do you make that fit anyway? Because, to make the space 360 degrees of the circle fit with 360 days of the year, you're missing 5¼ days every year. Do you see what I mean? So there's some things where it's not a proper physical correspondence, is it? It's a symbolic correspondence. Something like that.
Use the word qi also to describe these out of sync.
Yeah. Maybe. Anybody else? Hello. Oh, thank you.
You understand what you're writing, the Chinese, but you can know.
I'm a very slow student, and I've been studying classical Chinese, but specifically medical texts, for quite a long time. I started very late, so I decided that really the only thing I could do was to just focus on this, because if I start to try and read loads of other stuff, it's almost impossible. It takes me a long time.
This is what I want to explain, what you said, thank you, because sometimes it's old, the traditional Chinese, and even we learn in school, it's quite hard.
Yeah.
When you explain from English, it's quite clear.
Yeah, thank you. And it's because I focused on classical Chinese. I learned Mandarin much later on, and I like the traditional characters because there's so much more meaning in them.
Definitely, the soul, I think you catch this.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Well, thank you for being here, and I'm sorry if I completely made you fall asleep or confused you completely, because I know it was very dense. But I really wanted to do it, so thank you.